Okay. That was Rothschild that you were looking at. After seeing that guy, I don't really want to sing the song. I'll just say lyrics. There's a song by Jethro Tull. It's pretty cool. It's called Wind Up. Where he says, when I was young, and they sent me off to school, and they taught me how not to play the game. I didn't mind if they groomed me for success or if they said that I was just a fool. I left there in the morning with their God tucked underneath my arm, their half-assed smiles, and their book of rules. Uh, so to my, I asked this God a question, and by way of firm reply, he said, I'm not the kind you have to wind up on Sundays. And so he says, to my whole old headmaster and to anyone who cares, before I go, I'd like to say my prayers. You can excommunicate me on my way to Sunday school and have all the bishops harmonize these lines, or harmonize their lines. And he says, I don't believe you. You had the whole damn thing all wrong. He's not the kind you have to wind up on Sundays. And I get that. And obviously he went to a Catholic church. Let's see if I can fold the dimension over here. Fold it over. Look at that. My seat disappeared into another dimension. Allegedly. Everything on camera is true, isn't it? Okay. So yeah, they get that from Roman Catholicism. They'd make statues that had holes in them and the nose and the mouth, and they'd have a tube where wind would blow all the time. So the statue would be like the statue of Zeus or whoever it is actually breathing on you. Um, so that's what it means. They just turn, they just try to absorb scripture, just like they always have. Freemasons, they absorbed uh, the Old Testament, and then they absorbed the New Testament, and then they absorbed Islam while absorbing all the other ones. They just absorb whatever works best. Uh, it seems any Abrahamic religion works good enough to where they have to absorb all three of them. That's interesting, isn't it? But that's why they want you to hate one of the three or all three. Um, just because it's Abrahamic. But then they use the intelligence from it to enrich themselves. That was what Canaan was, the 400 years between Abraham's children leaving it to them returning. And in 400 years, they gave no credit to Abraham. They used his international trade knowledge to basically synchronize the world to it so it can profit off of it. And then they were the central hub of all black magic and witchcraft. And it goes over this in scripture, just people don't read it, I guess. And then they charge the Most High with wrong. When they don't even know. I don't know. I can't help them except telling them to read scripture. So once I get on here, so I call this World War Greed because I wasn't sure what to call it. There's so much that I was going to go over, and actually I just noticed something that I forgot to research. I mean, I could research it live. Well, I don't know how that will go, but um, yeah, the word free. So free. Anybody here want to be free? I don't know if they do. I'm about to tell you what free is. What's the price of freedom? Freedom's never free. You ever wonder why they say that? Freedom's never free? Wave of mutilation. Hello. Greetings, wave of mutilation. I have been awaiting. You're coming. That's a joke. It's just the phrase wave of mutilation. People are going to understand. Uh, anyway, so hello. Sh- Shemiramoth greets waves of mutilation. You can't make this up. This is just pure experience, just pure life. I'll call him Wave 2. Yeah, that's probably a nicer thing. Um, so to be free is, remember the F is just P, pe, rea, or pe, ro. So it's the mouth of the friend or the mouth of evil that breaks apart. You see how there's two sides of freedom? But Pharaoh's name even entails freedom. So he has fear, but then he has freedom. That's how the more you research Pharaoh's name in Hebrew, the more you realize that America is Pharaoh's system. They reuse this system over and over because for them it works. It's a sort of anarcho-capitalism. It's funny that we're under anarcho-capitalism in America already, and they get a bunch of people on the internet to beg the government to be anarcho-capitalist. I don't understand. It's like if you these people favor anarcho-capitalism for some reason, but then they don't even see that America's already anarcho-capitalist. They're capitalists and they rule by force. So, but anyway, so Pharaoh, do you want to be a Pharaoh? Because you know what else means free? To be feral. It's wild, like a feral dog. Pe ra el. Literally a power of Pharaoh. Because el, remember, is force. It's not equal to the English word God. Um, so literally feral, like Will Ferrell, he's pharaonic. And that's why I forgot to find. There's a band called Venom, I think it is. Some like black metal band. It's called Venom, and their symbol is the goat with the pentagram, but the specific phenotype of the goat looks like Will Ferrell. And this was like 10 years ago I did this as a joke. I think it was even MySpace. That's how old this was. Where I'm like, or maybe it was Facebook. Still old. But it's like, I put the picture. Why does Will Ferrell look exactly like the satanic goat in this band? Like their symbol. But it's called Venom. The band is called Venom. And it'll show the goat head. If you look it up, it looks like Will Ferrell. It's really weird. So what's William? William is determined protector. Um, so Will Ferrell is a determined protector of the force of Pharaoh. El Pharaoh, Pharaoh El. Uh, isn't that wild? Pharrell, isn't there a Pharrell Williams? There's like a forward and backward. Isn't it Pharrell Williams? Because there's a Will Ferrell and there's a Pharrell Williams, both meaning the same thing. If you're a free man, the land of the free, Pera or Perea, but we see too much Egyptian, or let's say pharaonic, because what is genetically called Egyptian nowadays isn't really what pharaohs are. Um, and it's hard. You'd have to look into things. I could maybe do videos to show people how to see the phenotype, but it doesn't help because a good person can have the phenotype. There's good people born into these houses. Moses didn't have the phenotype, obviously, but he was even brought into the house of Pharaoh and raised with them, even though it wasn't genetic. Um, so I thought of a Freemason. You know how Mitzrayim is Egypt, and Mitzrayim is basically the siege workers, the siege work masons. So the masons that made the siege works. that made the different implements of war. And so that's what a mason is, basically. Masons make castles. Masons make ramparts. They can make all kinds of stuff. They can take down walls. They can be engineers to take down walls. So that's what Mitzrayim is. And so a free mason would just be a pareah or a para, whichever it is. It seems to be the pharaoh most of the time. But you can be a free man in Messiah. Of course, they didn't use the English word free, but you can be a pareah, mouth of a friend. But then that's still not the free that we think of, right? Because it's external. It's a mouth of a friend that gives you the benefit if you interpret it that way. But that's why it most likely is interpreted most of the time as Pharaoh, because Pharaoh was a free man. Why? Because he made people fear him, and just all the aspects of Pharaoh, and then his society. That's why anarcho-capitalism, it's like if you just worship the system of it and glorify the system, even though there's horrible faults, you'll have the dark web, you'll have the black market, you'll have all kinds of crazy stuff. Because in order for the government to do what they want, they have to allow you to do it too, except they always have the advantage money-wise and all kinds of different things. America was built by design this way, so that rich people, all they have to do is move there and become more rich and make their own nobility, their own black nobility. But anyway, what do I know? And somebody brought it up to my attention, 90% of small businesses and land that like is owned by citizens, regular everyday people, are the boomers. The boomer generation of land owned by just, not big business owners or anything like that, just private land and private businesses, like small businesses. 90% of that is apparently owned by the boomers, and they're called the boomers because they're all born in a short amount of time. It was a baby boom. So if they all statistically have a similar lifespan, then there's going to be the baby doomers. You get the boom and then you get the doom, because it's like they're all going to die within the same like 10-year period, right? So if they own most of the private stuff, if Trump can literally pull like a Joseph, but like obviously a manipulative version of it, and have all the remaining boomers before they pass away, like somehow pledge their properties to the MAGA alliance or something, because they did that with the Vatican. The reason why they did crusades is because all the soldiers and like families and then people in their zeal would pledge all their property and ownings and inheritance to the Catholic Church. So they would die on the way to Jerusalem or in one of the crusades, and all of their property and everything wouldn't go to their family, it would go to the Vatican. So if you ever wonder why these popes would go to kings and beg them to fund a crusade, it's like all these people had to do was call a jubilee. But see, this was the thing. It was a delicate balance of power. If the Catholic Church can just call like anything, let's just say a jubilee, just to generalize it, they can get just what is the modern equivalent of like $100 trillion easily. So but back then in gold and jewels or whatever, silver, because all the different nations that are surrounding the whole Mediterranean would be giving their gold and everything. they'd be traveling, so it'd disrupt all kinds of things. So that was the power that the Catholic Church tried to wield over European kings was, hey, I can just take half of your economy, or at least I can threaten to. Right now, I just, oh, Jubilee. I can say that a almond tree grew out of a, uh, was it, what are those guys called? The little, the monks. Just say an almond branch grew out of a monk's forehead, and then we buried him in a solemn ceremony, and now we're going to call it Jubilee because Mary showed up to somebody and said, I want some money for some new clothes or something. I don't know what they tell people, but then they're like, oh, we're going to do a Jubilee, and Rome would be able to rob half the known world just calling a Jubilee, or at least a third of the known world. Anywhere from a fourth of the known world to half of it. I'm not even kidding. All of its wealth. Just like a Jubilee. Or a saint manifested somewhere. They can make something up. And then it was the battle between the kings and the Vatican. Can we do that ourselves without your permission? It's like, no. And then they battle, and it's like, oh, well, I'm going to say anathema. Yeah, now you're excommunicated. Just read history. It's so ridiculous. It's the children of Pharaoh. That's where you get feral. So I was gonna look up this project for the New American Century. 17, they had this giant, like, almost world meeting of Freemasons, and Rothschild was there. The Queen sent her blessings, and they basically told you the truth of everything in America with Freemasonry. It's very weird. So I'll go over that maybe in the second part or when I get to it. But that's what was paused in the first video that you had to read at the end of whatever part is the last part of this. I'll go over it and just read it because I might have some commentary for that. Let's see. So let me see new. You know what? I'll look it up before the second part. Oh, hello, Bellicose Hyperbole 737. Yeah, I'm gonna. Let's see. I'll look that up on the break. Project for New American Century. Hopefully saying that doesn't get. I don't know what gets flagged. Nobody even watches. Oh, you want to know who watches me? I can do that as a segue here because I forgot to get everything ready. That was weird. Usually I have everything ready. So let me get this window open. I don't want to see Kamala Harris's face right now. Please stop it. And then this mouse is always acting very annoying. And it's not the battery either. It's just no matter what, I can't. Where's the scripture at here? So I'm going to read Jeremiah. I was going to show something. I'm all over the place. Jeremiah was a bullfrog. Come on. There we go. So I was going to go over here. New American Century. Uh-oh. Why did I lose my place? I apologize. We'll get through this. So, where's this? Let me put the chat up here. I'm sorry, sometimes I have hiccups here, so... Oh, I was gonna... Okay, so I'll tell you who's watching me. I always feel like somebody's watching me, and I got no privacy. So, apparently on YouTube, you can look up who's watching you. If their pages give YouTube enough data. I was like, huh, that's interesting. So I never really looked it up, but who's watching me? Well, I'll just sum it up in the top cities, views by cities. So this picture I'm going to put up here. The views are low, obviously, because I don't have a lot of views. But at the top with 33 is Moscow, Russia. Then St. Petersburg, Russia. Minsk region, Belarus. Belarus. Roche. Aurora, Colorado. Definitely not where all the underground military bases and central intelligence hubs are. Kiev, Ukraine. Nothing's happening there. Sachet, Texas. You ever have a cache of something? It's intelligence gathering. Remember, Texas is the mark. All my exes live in Texas. Little Rock, Arkansas. Little Rock, Arkansas says 0, though. Isn't that interesting? Maybe that's my Fed. Has to count as 0. But it still tells me. Isn't that interesting? So basically, the people who want to hear this information the most come from Moscow, Russia, St. Petersburg, Russia, Minsk, Belarus, Aurora, Colorado, Kiev, Ukraine, Sachet, Texas. What's that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7. And 1 is 0, so it's actually 6. And I've been going over Sixers for a while, just randomly off air, not on here. But Shushan, Shush is like a lily, white, 6. That's what the word has to do with, because I think lilies have 6 petals. I'm not sure, but um, so there was this Rephaim who was named basically, I think it was like Shushan or something. It was the Sixer. Like Rephaim, it even sounds like Remfan. So this Rephaim was named like Shush, I forgot, Shushai or something. Shishai. I think it was Sheshai. Uh, and it was Sixer. That's why Babylon, instead of calling it Babylon in the end, because it's part of Jeremiah that I'm going to read, possibly, is it's a different form of Babylon. So they're like, oh, it's a nickname. It's like, yeah, it's a nickname, huh? But it's Sheshak. So it's the Sixer again. It's Remphan. Because Babylon is actually Ishtar, which is the 8-pointed or 7-pointed star, depending on whose perception. So it's not usually a 6-point. So it's interesting that they claim it's a nickname, but possibly it's a future thing that they just don't understand yet. So they assume it's a nickname. But it means Sixer because it's when Babylon mixes with the Sixers, maybe. Because wait a minute, isn't Babylon base 12? Aren't we base 10 and Babylon's base 12 with math? Babylon's base 12, right? Because that would be 6 plus 6. And remember, the number of the base is 666. That's Shush again. So Susa in the Citadel, Shusha, Sixers again. So it's trying to bind all of the dimensions in a physical power, it's witchcraft, and then access the infodimensional physically. It's all blasphemous. Blasphemous. I can hardly even say the word. And so that's just wild. So all this like Sixer thing keeps sewing up. So that's who's watching me. Shoosh, a, sachet, cachet. So sixing can even mean intelligence gathering, like MI6. It's not a coincidence. MI6, wasn't that I think that was on like a TV show or something. Or isn't that real? I thought MI6 was real. Whatever it is, that's why they call it 6. It's why you have the 66. And that's why they tell people shush. That's a spell. Telling someone to shush is a spell. Hush, or literally husha, is be silent. Shush is a spell. It's literally hexing 6. It's a hex. You see how it's like always a shibboleth, sibboleth thing? So that's always the trick. It's always the Jocktonite trick. Jockton. Just jocking around. Jock. Jocks and nerds. Remember what I said what nerd means? It's literally extracting by beating. Okay, so tell you the language stuff later. Let me pull up the scripture here. Actually let me go here. Put the window capture. There's Jeremiah. All right, listen carefully to this because it's very interesting here. I can make it bigger here. Nope. Text setting. I just don't like it when this happens. Oh, there we go. That's a little bigger now. Can you make this a bit smaller? Nope. Maybe it's the camera. There we go. I'm the most entertaining person in the world. Don't you realize that by now? Definitely not boring. All right, so look at this symbol. So, they use this symbol for Jeremiah. It's an eye, seemingly all-seeing because it's got the rays coming out of it. So it's like a eye beholding the infodimensional through what? A branch of 5 leaves through the 5th dimension. The eye, perception, 4th dimension, out of the 3rd dimension. The 3rd dimension is the chains. See how it's even the branch would be crowning out of the head. Oh, look at this occultic thing. So it's not occultic. It tells you just don't know. I just unocculted it for you. But anyway, let me read this. The words of Yirmiyahu, so I'm gonna pronounce them correctly. That's Shemiramoth. So the words of Yirmiyahu, son of Hilkiyahu, one of the priests who are in Anathoth. So that's the testimony of the mark of the Teth. So remember the Teth is the 2 Lameds. So you have Jeremiah and you have Hananiah, the false prophet. 2 different scholars creating a vortex. Because people get confused. They don't know who to believe. So literally the place where Jeremiah was from is called the testimony of the mark, or maybe in the small mark of the vortex, 2 opposing prophets in this case. In the land of Benjamin, which is son of strength or son of honor, right hand, to whom the Bar Yehovah, so the word of Yehovah, came in the days of Yoshayahu, which I think this is he is righteous, son of Amon, king of Yehuda, in the 13th year of his reign. 13, very interesting. It also came in the days of Jehoiakim, the son of Yehoshua, Yoshayahu, king of Yehuda. It's hard to do these off when I'm reading it in English. So 13th year is interesting because I spent 13 years at that false church I was at. And that's when I ended it with, like, I can go over that in another thing. People who have seen my past streams that I now deleted will know about that. So it came also in the days of Jehoiakim, the son of Yoshiyahu, king of Yehuda, and until the end of the 11th year of Zedekiah, the son of Yoshiyahu, king of Yehuda, until the captivity of Jerusalem in the 5th month. So the 5th month is, I think, September? No. Yeah, September. I think the 5th month is September. That's interesting. Wonder what day. Now the word of Yahweh came to me, saying, Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. That's fourth dimensional and higher. He can see that. So before I formed you in the womb, I knew you, and before you were born, I consecrated you. I mean, set apart. So he knew that Jeremiah would follow his command. So he predestined his role. That's the folly of these people who fight against the Most High. They don't realize that their role was destined to fight against him. Because they would never accept him, he still gives them the tests, maybe even more proofs than he gives us out of his mercy, but he predestines their role to be the ones fighting against him. So it's like you literally can't beat him. He predestined your role to fight against him because he knew you were going to lose and he knew you were never going to submit. In other words, he knew you were never going to num quam concedere, Trump's coat of arms. Never acknowledge. He knew that you were never going to acknowledge, so he just predestines your role as the last president of the U.S. Or an possible antichrist. So here we go. I appointed you a prophet to the nations. And remember, a prophet doesn't, in scripture, doesn't describe an office. It describes a behavior. I'll repeat that again. Remember, in scripture, a prophet, the word prophet in scripture in Hebrew does not describe an office. It describes a behavior. So prophet comes from a word which I forget off the top of my head, but it means to well up like a spring. So it's to profess. That's why professors in these universities are false prophets if they're telling you lies. They're actually true prophets if they're telling you the truth. That's the biblical view, the scriptural view of a prophet. It's their function. So I don't have to do this, but I do because I'd probably make me sick if I didn't. And it goes over that in Jeremiah. If I say, oh, I just won't do it anymore, it's like there's fire inside of my bones, worry of holding it in, and I cannot. That's just, so prophet scripturally isn't saying an office or a hierarchy necessarily. It's just describing what the person is doing. That's why I think it was Amos or one of those said, I'm not a prophet. My fathers weren't prophets. I just basically took care of sapling trees and bred sheep and goats. And he told me, go and basically tell these people what they're doing wrong, according to Torah. That's what a prophet is in scripture. That's why there's false prophets in the first place. Because it's really, really easy to be a false prophet. So then I said, Alas, Adonai Yahavah, behold, I do not know how to speak, for I am only a youth. Yahavah said to me, Do not say I am only a youth, for to all whom I send you, you shall go, and whatever I command you, you shall speak, even if it's just Moscow and St. Petersburg and Minsk and Aurora, Colorado and Kiev. Do not be afraid of them, for I am with you to deliver you, declares Yahavah. Then Yahavah put his hand and touched my mouth. Yahavah said to me, Behold, I have put my words in your mouth. What makes a person holy? See, I have set you this day over nations and over kingdoms, to pluck up and to break down, Shemiramoth, to destroy and to overthrow, to build and to plant. And the word of Yahweh came to me saying, Jeremiah, what do you see? Because remember, God doesn't need perception. Everything is an act of love in order for you to understand something, because you need perception. So it's not like the Most High doesn't know something when he asks a question. What he's saying is he wants to know what you have to say. Yamayahu, what do you see? And I said, I see an almond branch. Yahweh said to me, you've seen well, or I'm watching over my word to perform it, because there's a word for almond branch that sounds similar to the word for watching. That's the note that I will give here. I don't know if it'll show the note though. The word of Yahweh came to me. Remember, Dabar Yahweh came to me a second time. This is literally Messiah. That's what he's called. What do you see? And I said, I see a boiling pot facing away from the north. You can trace a line straight north if you'd like and see what happens on the other side. Then Yahweh said to me, out of the north disaster shall be let loose upon all the inhabitants of the land. For behold, I am calling all the tribes of the kingdom of the north, declares Yahweh, and they shall come, and every one shall set his throne at the entrance of the gates of Jerusalem, against all its walls, all around, and against all the cities of Yehuda. And I will declare my judgments against them, for all their evil in forsaking me. Remember, the Soviet government in the Middle East that calls itself Israel, they have a AI system they blasphemously call the gospel. Messiah came to save life, not to take it. That is the gospel. They call their instrument of death the gospel. And it's scanning every Semitic phenotype known to man. And once it's gathered its information, it will cause to be slain those who do not pay homage to it. They have made offerings to other Elohim and worshipped, or other forces, basically, and worshipped the works of their own hands. Iron Dome. But you dress yourself for work, literally geared your loins. Watch your area. Make sure your nuts ain't cramping, because I'm about to straighten you out. That's what he's saying. Geared your loins, or dress yourself for work. Arise and say to them everything I command you. Do not be dismayed by them, lest I dismay you before them. And I, behold, I make you this day a fortified city, an iron pillar, and bronze walls against the whole land. It's literally the whole earth. Iron pillar. Be interesting if it was magnetized. You know, when it comes to defense, it would repel iron if this is a magnetic. But I'm just making an observation here. Make you this day a fortified city, an iron pillar, and bronze walls. Copper. That conducts electricity, doesn't it? Against the whole earth, against the kings of Yehuda, its officials, its priests, and the people of the land. They will fight against you, but they shall not prevail against you, for I am with you, declares Yahweh, to deliver you. There we go. So, let me just look up in Ezekiel real quick, where it also talks about this bronze forehead, which was what I first was thinking of. And I thought it was Jeremiah, but it's actually Ezekiel. Ezekiel chapter 3. 3 is the magic number. So get this. Shemiramoth, the scroll, the word, understanding communication. I know the pieces fit. You understand? Let's see here. All right. So Yahweh said to me, Son of Adam, eat what you find here, eat this scroll. Remember the past videos I made? It was eat the scroll. That was my logo. Eat the scroll. That is the command. I'm not special. Everybody must eat it. Everybody must drink the cup. They shall not refuse. And he said to me, Son of Adam, eat whatever you find here. Eat this scroll and go. Speak to the house of Israel. So I opened my mouth, and he gave me the scroll to eat. And he said to me, Son of Adam, feed your belly with this scroll that I give you, and fill your stomach with it. When you go through these things, you really do forget to eat. It does actually fill your stomach. Then I ate it, and it was in my mouth as sweet as honey. And he said to me, Son of Adam, go to the house of Israel and speak with my words to them. Interesting how he said it's sweet as honey, because in Revelation, which would be what I would be living in, John has to eat the scroll. It's sweet, but it turns bitter in his stomach. Because it's the same scroll, but the time is fulfilled, is what John is seeing. So that's why it's bitter in John's stomach, and why it would be bitter in mine or anybody else's. Because it's the realization, when you see it, you're like, oh, all right, that's what that means then. And this is the time we're in. That's why it's bitter. And he said to me, Son of Adam, go to the house of Israel and speak with my words to them. For you are not sent to a people of foreign speech and a hard language, but to the house of Israel. I'm sent to English speakers. There's a lot of English speakers. Not to many peoples of foreign speech and a hard language whose words you cannot understand, like Mandarin. Surely if I sent you to such, they would listen to you. That's why they have a police state in all these Asiatic countries, and the social credit system in China. Because they would probably listen to me. So they have to be totally separate. That's why they have to be communist, or whatever they claim to be, because they have to be the opposite of the anarcho-capitalists. And I'll tell you, China's owned America since the beginning through the Mormons. That's why a lot of Mormon phenotypes are Asiatic looking in the eyes. But that's just Japheth. That's not even an Asiatic thing. That's just Japheth, which is the son of Noah. But I'll get to that. But the house of Israel will not be willing to listen to you, for they are not willing to listen to me, meaning the Most High. Because all the house of Israel have a hard forehead and a stubborn heart. Behold, I have made your face as hard as their face. They really look like one. And your forehead as hard as their foreheads. Like emery, harder than flint, I have made your forehead. His forehead can circumcise somebody. That's how. That's a mind thing. It's circumcising with the mind because of how you preach circumcision of the heart. If people can be mature enough, they can hear what I'm teaching here. Fear them not, nor be dismayed at their looks, for they are a rebellious house. Why should I be afraid of rebels? Rebels will all perish, according to Scripture. I don't care what they think they're fighting. Moreover, he said to me, Son of Adam, all my words that I shall speak to you receive in your heart and hear with your ears, and go to the exiles, to your people. Speak to them, say to them, thus says Adonai Yahweh, whether they hear or refuse to hear. I'm just reading this. It's hard because it's very amazing. Just to read this part right now. The Spirit lifted me up, and I heard behind me the voice, or let me click on this. The voice or sound of a great earthquake. And the earthquake sound said, "Blessed be the glory of Yahweh from its place." I'll learn how to speak that at some point. So you guys can hear it. That probably sounds really cool. But you see how it says it was the sound of the wings of the living creatures as they brushed past one another. Sound of the wheels beside them. Sound of a great earthquake. This language came from the sounds of creation. That's why Adam named all the animals, and people kept this tradition. I'm keeping it right now. It's the most dangerous thing to do, believe it or not. People don't see that. It's probably a good thing people don't see that, or else more people would be trying to stop me from doing this out of selfish reasons. If they actually knew what this information is and what it is to actually speak it, while YouTube claims the central hubs of the countries that are at the war and intelligence gathering hubs in America and the Balkans and Russia. That's very strange. So just putting that out there, making sure people remember. And then I was gonna read 24:15. Let's see. 24:15, because it's very important. I can end on this 24:15 and do the next part. So, oops. 25:15? Yeah, it's 25:15, never mind. So Jeremiah 25:15, the cup of the Lord's wrath. So I've always resonated with Jeremiah, and I'm starting to figure out why. I feel like this needs to be spoken in these times, just like the other part I've read already. So it's Jeremiah 25:15. Thus Yahweh, Elohim of Israel, said to me, "Take from my hand, power, this cup of the wine of wrath, and make all the nations whom I send you drink it." It's a lot easier to do that nowadays, isn't it? "They shall drink and stagger and be crazed because of the sword that I am sending among them." So I took the cup from Yahweh's hand and made all the nations to whom Yahweh sent me drink it. These people might regret watching. Jerusalem and all the cities of Yehuda, its kings and officials, to make them a desolation and a waste, a hissing and a curse, as at this day. Pharaoh Pera, king of Mitzrayim, place of the mark, his servants, his officials, all his people, and all the mixed tribes among them, all the kings of the land of us. Interesting how that is a U and an S. S or Z, same thing. It's like contemplating, but it's actually to move something along, I think. To haste something along, I think is us. But it has to do with us, which is contemplation, ushering in to push something along, but it's also has to do with contemplation because that's pushing along your own being is when you're contemplating. Kings of the land of Uz, all the land of the Philistines, Ashkelon, Gaza, Ekron, the remnant of Ashdod, Edom, Moab, the sons of Ammon. These could be connected to British royals because of how the genetics have branched out. All the kings of Tyre, Para, all its manifestations. The tyrants of Greece, the tyrants of Rome, the blood that mixed with Pharaoh. Where you get Poseidon, the king of Tyre, before it sank into the sea, prophesied by Ezekiel. All the kings, tyranny. So all the kings of tyranny, all the kings of Sidon, Sidon, and the kings of the coastlands across the sea, Mediterranean. Dedan, gets into Greeks. Dedan, Tema, Booths, all who cut the corners of their hair. All the kings of Arabia, Arab, to zigzag. All the kings of the mixed tribes who dwell in the deserts. All the kings of Zimri. Zimri is a song. That's all the musicians, all the rock stars. All the kings of Elam. All the kings of Media. That's our Persian Median influence in Europe and the US. You'd have to understand these genetics. All the kings of the north, far and near, one after another. Norway, Sweden, Russia, England, and all the kingdoms of the world that are on the face of the earth. It names specific ones, but then says everybody else. And after them, Sheshach shall drink. It says here if it shows it. Sheshach, a code name for Babylon. Sure, whatever you say. Sixers will drink last. The ones who make a covenant with death. And instead of saying, oh, that's nonsense, God says, oh, I'm going to annul your covenant with death. So the covenant of death was real. But God has the power to annul it, obviously. So what is this covenant? Does it involve going into an Egyptian pyramid and sleeping in a tomb all night so that you actually, according to your mythology, die and now you're in the land of the dead? So now you can actually unearth Egyptian mummies and talk about the forbidden things because ritualistically you have died in your Kabbalistic pharaonic death cult. Anyway, we're at the hour mark. Then you shall say to them, thus says Yahweh Sabaoth, Elohim HaIsrael, drink, be drunk, and vomit, fall, and rise no more, because of the sword I am sending among you. I've drawn this sword. I'm going to show you in part 2. I've drawn this sword years ago. And if they refusers. I'm not talking about hesitators. I'm talking about refusers. Here's the real thing. Here's the answer, Miss Carol Baker. And if they refuse to accept the cup from your hand, because you're profane in their eyes, to drink, then you shall say to them, Thus says Yahweh Sabaoth, you must drink. For behold, I begin to work disaster at the city that is called by my name, and shall you go unpunished? You shall not go unpunished, for I am summoning a sword against all the inhabitants of the earth, declares Yahweh Sabaoth. Keeps repeating this name. You therefore shall prophesy against them all these words, and say to them, Yahweh will roar from on high, and from his holy habitation utter his voice. He will roar mightily against his fold, and shout like those who tread grapes, against all the inhabitants of the earth. The clamor will resound to the ends of the earth, for Yahweh has an indictment against the nations. Ha, Goyim. He is entering into judgment with all flesh, and the wicked he will put to the sword, declares Yahweh. Thus says Yahweh Sabaoth, Behold, disaster is going forth from nation to nation, and a great tempest is stirring from the farthest parts of the earth. It's Antarctica. It's weird if you know what goes on there. All these countries just share pieces of it. Oh, look, here's verse 33. And those pierced by Yahweh on that day shall extend from one end of the earth to the other. That includes Antarctic bases. They shall not be lamented or gathered or buried. They shall be dung on the surface of the ground. Wail, you shepherds, and cry out, and roll in ashes, you lords of the flock. For the days of your slaughter and dispersion have come, and you shall fall like a choice vessel. No refuge will remain for the shepherds, nor escape for the lords of the flock. It's the false church. A voice, the cry of the shepherds, and the wail of the lords of the flock, for Yahweh is laying waste their pasture, and the peaceful folds are devastated, because the fierce anger of Yahweh, like a lion he has left his lair. For their land has become a waste because of the sword of the oppressor, and because of his fierce anger. What comes next? Yamayahu threatened with death. All right, so I'll show you. I drew that sword. I have to write this down so I remember. Drew sword. All right, so I'm going to end this one, and I'm going to keep doing other parts. So I'll probably come back on at 12:30 or something. I don't know. This was a good one. I know it's going to be a good one, but man, it's always something when it's happening. So let me get the music primed here, unintended, if you know where this music comes from. This is the G-Fed compound. This is what this song, this music is called, from the Metroid Prime 2 Echoes. There's a reason why Echo and economy and all these things. I don't have the time. I'm giving you the tool and the sword. I can't cut all the meat for you. I wish I could. I sure feel like I can, but obviously my flesh gets in the way and I can't cut all the meat for you. So here we go. Here's some meat cutting music. You can cut your own meat.
Can't eat your meat. Can't have any pudding. How can you have any pudding if you don't cut your meat?